Well, welcome everyone to the 15th Annual Growing Online Learning Conference presented by the Illinois Community Colleges Online. The theme for the 2023 conference is creating meaningful interactions in the online classroom. We hope that this year's conference offers you ideas and strategies to engage your students. I'm Dr. Kona Jones, and I will be moderating this session. First of all, I'd like to send a big thank you and shout out to Heartland. Heartland is doing the web conferencing, so they're providing our web conferencing platform. And please note that captioning is available for the conference sessions. Go ahead. All right, so our schedule briefly for the 3 days is on the screen. It can also be found at the conference website at ilco.net under resources and events. And go ahead. And for slide 3, links to attend the live sessions will be found on the conference website and your registration confirmation email. If you have any questions on accessing the sessions, please contact Jeff Newell at jeff.newell@illinois.gov. Recordings of these presentations and handouts will be available at the conference site on ilco.net following the conference. So for our speaker introductions, ILCO is pleased to welcome Dr. Carrie Prophet, Scott Ryle, and Meredith Tumilty of College of Lake County. And I'm going to hand it over to them for the rest of it, but welcome, and we're excited to have you presenting.
Thank you. Thanks, Kona. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We want to start by thanking ILCO and all the people that make this event happen every year at College of Lake County. We really look forward to the Growing Online Learning Conference every year, and so we're very excited to be presenting this year. My name is Meredith Tumilty. I'm the Director of Online Student Success at College of Lake County, and I'm here with a couple of incredible colleagues. We have Dr. Carrie Prophet, who's a CLC Communication Studies instructor, and Scott Ryle, who is the Director of Ed Tech at CLC. And although the three of us are here sharing this with you today, we're just representing the work of many, many people who were involved in this endeavor. So we want to extend our appreciation to all the people for their time and efforts that worked on this as well. So in this session, we're going to share how we addressed the U.S. Department of Education's regulatory requirement into an exciting reason to celebrate at College of Lake County. We'll walk you through how we took an innovative approach to address the updated Department of Education's guidance surrounding RSI by leveraging faculty champions to create an internal, one-of-a-kind, customized resource for our faculty to drive change and to support online success. And our hope is by sharing this with you and sharing our experience, that you'll be able to take this back and perhaps apply some of it at your home institutions. If the end result of creating a faculty resource isn't necessarily the best fit for your institution, we think there might be other valuable takeaways that you might be able to use in terms of leading strategic forward-thinking action plans, advocating for faculty professional learning, and creating environments that foster collaboration between faculty and administration to promote online student success. So for our agenda, first, we'll very, very briefly mention the Department of Education's updated guidance that put this work into motion. Then Kari is going to outline the approach that we took at College of Lake County, including the role of our faculty who were very integral to this work. Next, Scott is going to share a couple of the tools that were utilized, in particular, the SUNY Empire State College RSI dashboard graphic has really resonated with our faculty in terms of understanding the difference between correspondence education and distance education, and the OLC endorsed SUNY Online Oscar 4.0 course design review scorecard, of which components inspired the structure for the faculty resource that we developed and that we'll be sharing a little later on. So that brings us to the next point, which is subsequently, we're going to give you a preview of the CLC faculty RSI guide that was created as a resource for our faculty. And finally, we'll plan to save some time at the end to answer questions that you guys might have about what we did. So as I'm sure you're already aware, so we won't spend too much time on it, the U.S. Department of Education's final rules on distance education and innovation went into effect on July 1st, 2021. And among other things, the new regulations updated the definition for what's referred to as correspondence education and distance education in an effort to clarify the difference between those two modes of course delivery. One of the primary elements for this distinction between what's deemed as correspondence education and what's defined as distance education is commonly referred to as RSI. These updated definitions are important because there are consequences that could impact accreditation, articulation agreements, and students' ability to access federal financial aid. So really this boils down to compliance. We knew that we needed to get this updated guidance out to our faculty, but we didn't want to do so empty-handed. So we wanted to come with a resource that they could use that would help them implement RSI in their classes in alignment with the updated guidance. Plus, we also recognize that regulations might tend to read a little like stereo instructions. So we wanted to share the guidance in a way that was really practical for our faculty. When we embarked on this journey, we needed an approach that would work for us and our culture as an institution. So that's one takeaway that we'd like for you to consider. Much like teaching, it's very important to consider your audience. And so to be sure to think about like the nuances of the climate where you're at and what might work best for your institution. To ensure success, we kept a few elements in mind. The first was our college culture. College of Lake County has offered online classes since the late 90s, so there is a long-standing history with online education. Second, we wanted to make sure faculty were involved in the process, since ultimately faculty are responsible for engaging in RSI with their distance education students. By leveraging the longstanding institutional history with online education and our faculty expertise and experience with online teaching, we had a great foundation to champion RSI in support of the updated guidance. But there was also one more critical element. For this to be successful, we needed support from leadership. This meant making sure that our work was clearly connected to our strategic plan and strategies. In addition to connecting that work to the strategic plan, we were lucky enough to have the support of a dean, Dr. Vicki Sitkovic, who I think is on the call today. She worked very hard, tirelessly, to make sure that this work was prioritized and supported, and her leadership was extremely impactful in allowing us to be able to do this work. So I'll pass it along to Kari, who's going to talk about our approach.
Thank you, Meredith. I think you had the hard part of the presentation, actually. So, well, going back to our culture, when the guidelines came out, right, the pandemic had hit us in March. Well, then we were also in the process of changing our LMS. So, come July, right, we have faculty who have had to change their modality of teaching, and then they also had to change the content of where and how they were posting their teaching and instructional material. So that was really an impetus for us to understand that we had to be sensitive to our internal cultural environment. So, you know, while RSI of course came out and it's very important, but we had to socialize the concept with faculty, not at faculty, with all those rapid changes and uncertainty that came with those two forced foreign modality and platform. Now is not the time to come in on faculty with something else that's being mandated, a new regulation. So to get faculty buy-in, we turned to the principles of Berger and Calabrese's 1975's uncertainty reduction theory. Translation, transparent communication that clearly defined a purpose, a plan, what those best practices in action looked like rather than being vague or as a stereo speak, as Meredith said, as best as we could anyway. And then also we needed to have a definitive timeline. And for us, that was 3 years before we were expecting HLC to come in. So the win would be tapping the expertise that was in the institution. So we had two assets. One, we had faculty that were already trained and thriving in online pedagogy and instructional practice. And two, we had also had faculty and staff that had already, they were well versed in RSI, either because they had been introduced to it through another organization as a learner or as someone who had experienced it from the other end and wasn't such a good review. So we were able to tap that expertise to get us started. And as such, we were able to form a team that was both experienced faculty and staff, and that provided us with a lens from both sides of the house to be able to define and design, develop these new tools that clearly, that demonstrated internal practices that were best practice in action by our peers as a prompt for online student success. So if you're not going to come down with a hammer, right, to leverage, okay, we got to do this because accreditation purposes, we need financial aid for our students. There had to be a rhyme or reason as to like why we were doing this within the institution. So we had to connect it, as Meredith was saying, in order to get the buy-in. So, well, the rhyme and reason proved turnkey. As Meredith was referencing, we have 6 strategic pillars that guide our plan, our strategic plan at CLC, and they are not ranked in order of importance. They are all equal. And you'll see here that strategic pillar number 3 is teaching and learning excellence. And so our plan comes down to key ideas, which was then active and collaborative learning, which of course is the epitome of RSI, and then it drops down to strategy, which is, in this case, you can see, it's defined as incorporate high quality, active collaborative learning. And so there, that strategy was how we were able to attach our mission to the strategic plan, which is defined here as evidence-based online teaching strategies will be championed to increase student to student and student to faculty interactions in alignment with the DOE's new definition of distance education and specifically how it relates to RSI. So with that, we officially had a mission possible, right? So here's how we accomplished that mission. And of course, we chose to accept it because we had no choice. We are going to have to implement these guidelines at one point or another. We were just going to try within first. So I'll just introduce each of these briefly, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail. So, first we had to talents, right? How are we going to leverage RSI in-house if we weren't going to use the outside leverage, all right? And make it a collaborative initiative because, again, remember, we have the pandemic as isolating people, and then also Canvas, that learning that was going on, which again, we were learning at home, and Scott will probably tell you we're probably June and July, maybe the worst the darkest days of his career. And he worked endlessly with a team of other people that were bringing everybody on board. So great kudos to all that work. The tools then, we did not want to reinvent the wheel, and then actually having something outside that was already evidence-based as a guide was really useful. So this is why we jumped on the Oscar scorecard. And then to that, we used it to build something that was specific to CLC within our organization. And I forgot to mention too, while this was going on, just prior to the pandemic, we had also kind of changed the way faculty was, and actually the entire institution was addressing and finding content. Like how were we had changed our platform for how we were accessing information about our institution, where we were storing collaborative documents. And so there was just really a lot of, mayhem going on with uncertainty. And so we really needed to communicate clearly in a lot of ways. And so that brought in the touch points. And so we had to hit all levels of the institution, right? Because all levels are accountable at some point. And given the size of our institution and a fluctuating faculty pool, we had also various levels of understanding, various levels of, awareness even. And so it was going to take some time to actually institutionalize the concept. And then, of course, collaborative in-house faculty. We'd had so much isolation. Collaboration was kind of our value added ticket that we were trying to put in there to help us gain the leverage or gain ground with our faculty. So first, to tap talent. So given the three of us, our varied roles within the institution, we knew of faculty and staff that had the RSI experience and the quality online teaching that we knew could be tapped as, I would say, as champions, right? And we were aware of their voice. People respected them, they were listened to, they did quality work. But the sticky ticket was it needed to be across divisions, across departments. And so we, after, and full-time and part-time, and then of course, not only academic departments, but career departments too. So we needed a wide, net to cast. And, maybe we could have, we started with ourselves. Here's our list. But first of all, it was completely insufficient, and then more importantly, we wanted to make sure that we hit the other levels within the all levels, not just ours, but, the academic deans. So we went to them and said, hey, here's what we're looking for. Here's what we're doing. Who would you suggest as a team member? And then we also tapped out into the faculty chairs. We reached out across, like I said, divisions and transfer versus career. And so between that, we were able to get a really good list. And the problem was it was starting to take a lot of time. And our faculty were already we're going to ask somebody to take on another project to help. And so we had quite a list, but it got exhausted pretty quick. So we needed to tap all those resources to find the people that could help. And we came out with amazing 8 colleagues and champions for implementing RSI. So that was a win right there as well. So that brings us to, and Scott and Meredith will talk more about the scorecard and the guide in a few minutes. The touch points though I want to go into, we had a message and we took it everywhere. So we had to socialize RSI throughout the whole institution, okay, starting at the very top, okay, and go through all the various levels. And it was going to take some time for us to be able to do that. We have 2,000 about plus faculty. Let's see. Well, no, it's 1,200 faculty and 200 are full-time. So that's what I meant earlier about a fluctuating faculty base, and that they had these different, levels of understanding. But what was really important, because we were raising awareness and we wanted a specific strategic plan that no matter where they heard it or who they heard it from, it was consistent. So it was pretty much Meredith, Scott, and I taking this message everywhere we could. And public speaking professor here, did you know that somebody has to hear things 3 to 7 times before they'll actually retain new information? I think it might take more on this topic, but we did the 3 to 7 times. We did touch every person. So now to the training. Obviously the guide was going to be available, but we didn't want it to be a standalone, and we didn't necessarily think that faculty were going to just go to it and teach themselves on their own. So we had 2 additional pillars to help us with it. And one was just the professional learning shops to help, again, keep continuing to socialize. The first one I think we had was understanding the Oscar scorecard. I mean, I even had a colleague who I convinced to come. She's like, why do I want to go to an Oscar? I mean, she goes, that sounds like the Oscar I think of lives in a garbage can, And I'm like, well, I think of the Oscar with the, the Golden Globe. So there's a gap in the frame of reference on this for sure. So we started with that, and then we did some putting the S in RSI, putting the I in RSI. And we have another one coming up at the end of this month where We're going to actually look at the Canvas tools that can help faculty, monitoring the engagement of their students. And then the other part is we did have some faculty that were low-lying fruit that were going to be ready to just get on board and instantly make changes. And so that's where we brought in the individual consultation time with the instructional designers who have a conversation. It's not a review. It is definitely a discussion, and they aid them like in understanding what needs to be done. And they can also point them to where the tools are to help them like upskill their RSI strategies. So, I mean, I think one of the bottom line, one of the motivations we had, or maybe it was our mantra in, collaborating with everybody, is that we really wanted faculty to now thrive through the after effects of the pandemic, and not just survive. So how are we going to develop the survival kit for them that would make them thrive? And that was our messaging the whole time, was this is a growing opportunity. There's good stuff going on already. Let's just capitalize on it. So I'll turn it over to Scott here.
Thank you, Kari. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the tools we used to not only accomplish some of the orienting toward RSI that you heard Kari refer to, and also served as a foundation for not only what became our faculty RSI guide, but also what we can continue to look at as our faculty work through reviewing and enhancing certainly their online courses, and also likely virtual live and Zoom based type courses. This graphic, which maybe you've seen, maybe you haven't, this is from the State University of New York's Empire State College. And this is one that resonated very much with our faculty to understand what we were talking about when we were talking about RSI moving away from what would be considered more correspondence education into what the Department of Ed would call true distance education. And so obviously over on the left with the frowny face, we have our auto-graded quiz or our video lecture, or even our weekly announcements that's more of a reminder, and all the way up to graded assignments that really don't have any feedback. And our faculty kind of saw this and said, uh-oh, wait a minute, that might be the majority of what my course consists of. What's wrong with that? And really it came to having that discussion about moving from the left to the right about the small differences that really make that enhancement towards having positive RSI, and that's the robustness of the feedback, or the content explanation as part of an announcement, or a video lecture that has a corresponding discussion, or set aside office hours. And it was this graphic this became sort of the icon of thinking about this in terms of, well, where am I today and what would I need to do to move forward? So a lot of these things were contained in this, and that made the discussion, it framed it for our faculty as we started that socialization that Kari mentioned. So one of the big things that came into this process for us was coming up with a solid tool, and we wanted a tool that, as Kari mentioned, was evidence-based, and we found and settled on the Online Learning Consortium, the SUNY Online's OSCAR scorecard. I'll often end up calling it a rubric, and I do that all the time. It's that too. The Online Standard Course Quality Review is what OSCAR stands for. And what is so nice about this tool, and we're using the 4.0 version of this, which is the latest version, over 20 years of research are already in this tool. And it was created to provide instructors with a set of best practices for their online course design and help them self-evaluate to improve the quality of their own course. And so one of the nice things about the OSCAR is that it's actually set up very purposefully in a sequential way. And if you look at those major categories, the 6 major categories, course overview and information, moves to course technology and tools, moves to design and layout, moves to content and activities. So the idea behind that sequential order is that that's also how a student would typically experience the course, and often a great way to look as we move through design. So it also, then you see that little dashboard icon in the lower right hand corner, and you'll see here in a second those that icon that our faculty are now used to in the discussion of RSI appears right within that Oscar scorecard. So they can see the elements of the scorecard that are directly impactful to their course's regular and substantive interaction. And so here we have our Oscar course design review scorecard, just a little sampling of the beginning. And you see that icon on the left for the different pieces that are directly related to RSI. So we've gotten a few different things happening with the Oscar, and that is, we've always had online teaching requirements at the institution, but we didn't always have a common foundation of expectation. And that's the piece that the scorecard has really brought in conjunction with our discussions around RSI, because obviously the scorecard, there's 50 standards there. It's all encompassing to online course design. And a lot of those standards are related to regular and substantive interaction, but then all of them are related to good online course design. And so we've been using that to make sure that as we're having that conversation with our faculty, they can see that relationship and they can have an opportunity. And as you'll see just here in a second, when we get to the star of this show, you'll see how we utilize the Oscar scorecard to create the faculty guide. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this back to Meredith, where she's going to take you on a little tour of the faculty RSI guide.
Thank you, Scott. So the faculty RSI guide, the star of the show, as Scott called it, launched in June of last year. In the guide, our CLC faculty can learn about the updated Department of Education guidance related to RSI, including evidence-based best practices for supporting RSI in classes that are categorized as that distance education per the DOE. The RSI best practices in the guide connect to the RSI standards from the Oscar 4.0 scorecard. So those are the ones with those little icon next to them. And the guide has been a wonderful way to highlight and champion the great work and evidence-based practices our faculty are doing with RSI in their classes. CLC faculty can access the guide through their dashboard on Canvas. And even though the guide lives on Canvas, it's not a course, it is a guide. Canvas was a good vehicle for us to use for it, because faculty are already in Canvas teaching their online and blended courses, since it's our LMS or learning management system, which makes it very accessible for our faculty. Also, having the guide live in Canvas allows us the opportunity to make updates and to add additional best practices and examples, which supports our goal that we wanted the guide to be a very dynamic resource. Plus, instructors can actually see authentic examples from their faculty peers that look and feel the same way they do in the LMS in their peers' classes. We received really positive feedback from faculty. They liked that we put it in Canvas and use that as the location of the guide. So give me just a moment. I'll switch us over and we'll take a look at it. All right. So we are right now on the landing page of the guide, and this is where faculty first land. It's the front page of the guide. So this is where they first land. And here you can see we have a welcome message, and there's a video that really just talks through why and how the guide was created for our faculty here at CLC. Faculty are encouraged, a little lower down here, to start here if it's their first time in the guide. We tried to make the guide very user-friendly and easy to navigate. It's a guide, so once faculty kind of know how to navigate it, they might be looking for something very specific. So we know that we knew we wanted it to be easy for them to jump around and find what it was they were looking for efficiently and effectively. In addition to leveraging some of the features in Canvas with the navigation blocks for that ease of navigation, you might have noticed if you're familiar with Canvas that we utilized a theme from Design Plus just to give it a kind of a more professional look and feel, our branded CLC colors here, and just make it a little more aesthetically, the design a little more aesthetically pleasing for the user. So we'll go to start here first. The content in Start Here covers an overview of the guide. It has the guide organization and then tells faculty to go out there and explore. As you can see, there's these 3 main sections to the guide. There's the RSI, that's the first section. The second one is about the Oscar, which was the foundation for the third part, which is the biggest and most robust part of the guide, and that was the RSI best practices. And faculty can toggle between these different sections. They can use these links, or we created these navigation panes in, using the features in Canvas so they can access them that way. In addition, it's hidden right now, but they can also navigate through modules, and we'll look at that a little later on. So we'll start with the RSI section. And the RSI section has a handful of pages worth of content. The first one is an overview of the Department of Education's updated guidance that went into effect in July 21. It also talks a little bit about why this guidance is important to compliance in terms of articulation agreements and federal financial aids and things of that nature. On the next page, it gets into a little bit more detail about the difference between correspondence education and distance education. And again, we wanted to highlight some of the features in Canvas that we would want to use here. We have different tabs they can toggle between. Those help to engage our students in their classes. So of course we would use those for our faculty too, as a way to make the content a little more engaging. So they can click back and forth to see that information and how the Department of Ed defines it. The next page, maybe getting a little closer to home, is the Higher Learning Commission, or HLC, and how they define RSI. And then this is a really important piece related to RSI. It's those, you've probably heard of these, the 3 essential characteristics of RSI, which are really important. And again, using those, some of those engaging dynamic tools that Canvas has, so they can expand all of them or collapse all of them as faculty are going through to see that information. Then we have that RSI dashboard graphic that Scott talked about as a resource for faculty, since this really resonated with them as a nice way to visually show that sort of, difference between correspondence education and distance education and all the varying levels kind of in between. So that was a good resource for faculty, which takes us to the last page in the RSI section, which is more references and resources for faculty related to RSI. So if they wanted to go out and learn more about that, they could. The next section, which faculty could get to by clicking next, everything they can get to by going to next. So if they wanted to go through it almost like a book, they could if they wanted to. But again, we created all these shortcuts. So the next section is the Oscar 4.0 section. And as you can see, it discusses OLC and SUNY Online, the Oscar scorecard itself, and how to access it. As Scott talked about, the Oscar 4.0 is a way to improve online course design quality. And it's made up of those 50 institutional standards that relate to good online course design, accessibility, and RSI. And there's 19 that are specific to RSI. And it was those 19 that became the framework for the biggest section of the guide, which is the RSI best practices. And so what I'll do now is I'll show you the modules so you can see it from that view, and then we'll go into some of the best practice stuff. So here in modules, which, you know, those of you that have an LMS or teach online, you're very familiar to this. So this is an easy way to kind of jump around and navigate. So we've seen the welcome, we looked at those RSI pages, we have the Oscar, and then down here are the RSI best practice pages. And so as I scroll down, you can see there's a lot of them, 19 in total, that faculty can go to learn about different aspects of online course design and how it connects to RSI. One other thing you may notice is that some of them are indented. That's because those categories are how they're organized. So there's 6 categories in total. And so that's how we organized it here in the guide. That way it was in alignment with that best practice. So we'll start with one of the category pages. We'll look at the first one, the course overview and information, and then we'll look at one of the RSI best practice pages. So to illustrate a category page, we're going to look at this one. So on a category page, first it explains, kind of using language that we would use at CLC to discuss this, what that category entails and the standards related specifically to RSI for that. And then it includes a list of the best practices that fall under that particular category. And then a little further down, we also have some navigation. So if faculty wanted to bounce around to different categories, they could jump around that way too. Again, ease of use, efficiency, trying to make it a really helpful practical guide. So we'll take a look at one of the RSI best practice pages. So this is the first one. And as I mentioned, there's 19 pages that are very similar to this, just related to different topics. They all follow the same template. So we'll walk through what the different components are that we put on there. And again, each one explains a different evidence-based RSI best practice. And even though the best practices are research-based and evidence-based, the language and the examples are all kind of wedded in our CLC culture and community and things of that nature. So it's very personalized and customized. So, okay, so the first thing that you'll see is a title at the top. This one is the Welcome and Getting Started page. And then the next part is what Oscar standard it connects to. So this one just happens to be the first one, and its course includes welcome and getting started content. So we're aligning it, we're connecting it back to that. I scroll down. The next part is an overview. And so here it really talks about, what does this best practice mean? What does it look like? How does it function? And then we have how it connects to RSI. So one of the things with the Oscar is some of the standards relate to whether they specifically address RSI or if they can be used in support and to articulate RSI. And so in this connection to RSI, that was a really important piece that we wanted to make sure was clarified, is this best practice something that specifically addresses RSI, or is it something that can be used to articulate or in support of our RSI guidance? The next part discusses how the best practice supports online student success. So here we have, for this particular example, how students may feel when they first access the course for the first time, and how welcome and getting started content can help provide them with guidance and help them feel more comfortable learning in the classroom, in the online classroom. Next, we have the best practice in
Did she freeze?
Yeah, it looks like it, unfortunately.
Okay, I'll pick it up from here. So we have the best practice in action, and this is now faculty help, coordinate all the information, the layout of what we wanted to do. But what we really wanted to tap faculty with was the best practice in action. And so we tried to we would get as many internal examples as we possibly could. And so there we go. Is she back? She went out and back. Oh, we lost her screen. Oh.
Hi, sorry about that. I'm back.
I got them through how we got the information for best practice in action. I don't know if you want to move to show an example and then, or go down to the bottom part to the rest.
Sure, absolutely. Did you talk about the first example in here, Kari?
I talked about, I was just getting to it. I didn't show it though.
Sure. Okay, thanks for hopping in. Sorry about that, everyone.
No worries.
So the first example here was actually the start here that we just looked at a few minutes ago. So I won't necessarily go back to it. But this gives an example we wanted to model for faculty, kind of the same things that we were telling them were best practice. So in the guide, even though it's not a course, we included start here content. And so we gave that as an example, since this is that welcome and getting started RSI best practice. And then the second one is actually an example from Kari. So we'll share that one and take a look. So this is a welcome announcement that Kari uses in her intercultural communications course. And here she welcomes her students to the class. The tone, if you take a look, is very upbeat and positive. She establishes that she's supportive of her students. She writes she's looking forward to guiding them in the class, and she provides them with a lot of tips to support their success. Since this is an announcement that students receive at the beginning of the semester, it helps to establish a positive, supportive rapport from the start, which is really important. Plus, she directs the students to different resources to support their success. So there's some links in here to technology, such as laptops that students can check out, and free Wi-Fi spots down here, as well as access to tutoring and mental health support, among many others. So sharing these and showcasing these real examples from our faculty that they're using with our CLC students provides models and inspiration that their faculty peers can utilize in their own classes. So instead of just telling them what the research best practice is, we're actually showing it to them. We're actually illustrating it and showing it in practice, which can really help to clarify the best practice and allow faculty to more efficiently be able to implement it into their own online course design. I'll just go back here. So as you can tell, this is very personalized for our faculty and our college culture. And here's where you could potentially work with your faculty to curate and develop exemplary examples of RSI best practices that can be showcased with a wider faculty audience. And that's really been, I think, one of the most exciting parts of this work. The Faculty RSI Guide has been a wonderful way to really showcase and celebrate our faculty's great work with RSI, as well as leverage it as professional learning for fellow faculty. The next two sections, if I scroll down here, include resources, tools, and references. And if faculty want to learn more, this gives them a starting point where they can explore even more about the RSI best practice. Let's go back to the home. So we hope this preview was helpful and it gave you a feel for how the CLC Faculty RSI Guide functions. We've been really happy with how it's been utilized by our faculty. After lots of collaboration and work on it, the guide officially launched in June of 22, and within 3 months had already logged over 1,000 home views by CLC faculty, which we felt like was a great feat given the timing of launching it in summer, and also demonstrates faculty interest in the guide. So I'll leave the guide up on the screen in case there's something in particular people want to see, but otherwise I'll hand it over to Kari, who's going to facilitate the Q&A.
Yes, thank you everyone for your time, and thank you for that thorough review, Meredith. I think that explained it really well. So I thought we'd take this time, if anybody had some questions, I guess we can take them in the chat, and I think maybe between the three of us, we'll be able to hopefully answer some of those.
We did have one person, Ben, asked about if this was something we would share or already sharing via Canvas Commons. I did mention that because it's personalized and because our faculty that provided examples were promised that those examples would stay internal, it isn't something that we are able to share. So I don't know if Meredith or Kari want to elaborate on that at all, but I just wanted to mention that that was one that we had previously.
Yeah, I think you did. You covered it. Oh, the template page, Meredith, do you want to address it? So Jacob's asked, if not, maybe a template page of our setup.
I'll go back to that to show that again.
It's very slick. Thank you.
And
I will admit that Meredith is the one with the design eye on this team.
And I know Meredith mentioned it, but I'll mention it again for those of you that aren't familiar. There is an add-on tool. Yes, Susan mentioned design tools. That's exactly where I was going. I know a lot of my ILCO peers are familiar with design tools. It is an add-in feature from a company called CiDiLabs, CiDiLabs, a great little company out in Utah in the Canvas heartland. It plugs into Canvas and it provides a lot of the functionality that you see in terms of the style of the guide and some of those tools like the tabs and the expanders and Meredith mentioned this, but we tried to model some of those things in ways that they could be effective for the faculty as well. Yeah, Kona, they also have Tidy Up and Tidy Up is another tool we are fortunate enough to have gotten at College of Lake County, and we are slowly introducing that one as well. Tidy Up will clean up files in your Canvas shell, help you clean up files and content that maybe you are no longer using.
So I'll scroll down. This is sort of the template that we used for each of the best practice pages. So there's, again, 19 in total. So you could kind of see the elements that we incorporated. But again, given kind of the nuances of your particular institution or the needs of your faculty or students, it could be different. So we had that the name at the top, and then we connected it since we're connecting back to the Oscar. We utilized that. Did an overview of the best practice, connecting it to the RSI, then how it all supports online student success. Those best practices. And again, this particular one has 3 examples, but some of them have, many more. Some of them, as you kind of get into the interaction pieces and the assessment, there's a lot more varied ways. We also wanted to represent a lot of diverse disciplines as well. And so, there's a lot of variety in terms of the best practice examples throughout the guide. And then again, the resources and tools, and then the references.
Hey, Lisa. She had asked, do we gather the evidence / documentation from faculty on how they are meeting the RSI or the Oscar standards? And I think I'll have Scott talk to that, but yes, our faculty champions did receive a stipend. It was just for 1 credit hour release load. I have mentioned in the chat, we did this all in 1 semester and it really didn't get started until like March, and it launched in June. So I would suggest spreading that out. I don't think we realized how much work was going to be needed to make this successful. And we really wanted it to be everything we had promised it would be when we started this endeavor. So yeah, and we probably, our faculty champions, well, they're getting a lot of pride.
And
Got the documentation.
yeah, Lisa, for the front end of that question, we're in the process of working on a procedure and a way to look at that. We currently have a voluntary setup to where we are happy to meet with faculty and talk about the Oscar rubric and RSI and their approach to that in conjunction with utilizing the guide. We don't have a formal method right now, but we're working on that as we continue to work through the very latest guidance around RSI, which you may also be familiar with from as soon as November. And so that is in progress, is how I would put that. You are very welcome.
Well, I will thank you all then for your time and attention and interest today. It's been lovely sharing this with you and hearing your feedback and seeing your interest. I think, Meredith, we have a page that if you need to or want to, I guess, reach out to any of us, because we kind of each have different roles. So depending on your question, you might decide which one you'd want to reach out to. But again, just really thank you so much. And we wish you your success on your RSI journey as well.
Thank you all.
Yeah, so let's everyone give all of our speakers a round of applause. You already are kind of doing that, but great session and has given all of us, I know I've been sitting here taking my notes as well. So thank you, everyone. But yeah, let's thank our speakers. An evaluation link. Let's see, sorry, I lost my place here. An evaluation link is available in the chat area and on the conference website. So hopefully we will get that evaluation link out there. Then also our schedule for this week is on the screen. So give me just a second and we will get that schedule up there for all of you to check out. And then, yeah, we'll wrap this up for you. Yay. But thank you everyone for coming.
Not sure if you were able to see that or not. I'll share it.
Okay.
Try that.
All right, very good. Okay, so we've got our schedule for this week. A reminder that our next session is going to be tomorrow. And we've got one of Richland's own, Michelle Stevens, doing tangible takeaways, a practical discussion on quantifying the feedback flow from 10 to 11 a.m. And I'm really excited for this one. I think it'll be really interesting. And then we also have Moraine Valley, Engaging Students, Conversation with Dr. Allison Lancy. And I think, and that's also with Lisa. And I think that's going to be like a really cool one. I was reading the description and I'm like, oh, that's going to be really neat. Oh, an email will go out after the conference. I'm sorry, with the evaluation link. I apologize for that one. But yeah, so just as a reminder, links to attend the live sessions are on the conference website and also in your registration email. If you have any questions on registration or accessing the sessions, please contact Jeff Newell at jeff.newell@illinois.gov. Recording of the presentations and handouts will be available at the conference site on ilco.net following the conference. So once again, thank you everyone for attending and thank you to our presenters. Bye, everybody. And I'm supposed to remind you to stop